This is a 1996 Dodge Viper RT10, and I love everything about it. It's got a big V10, a manual transmission, no driver aids, big power, it looks ridiculous, and this one is especially cool because it's one of the very rare ketchup and mustard Vipers they made, red with yellow accents. It just adds to the sheer absurdity of it all. And today I'm going to review this car and show you all of its quirks and features. Before I get started, big news, this Viper is currently for sale and it's being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This is a special one, 96 Viper, red and yellow, absurd and crazy, just like they all should be, and it could be yours on Cars and Bids. So, once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to visit the live auction for this Viper, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, time for the quirks and features of a 96 Viper, yellow and red, ketchup and mustard. A ridiculous car, but before I get to that stuff, let's start with the basics, a little history. The Viper first came out for the 1992 model year as an open-top roadster, and it was famous for being basically just a V10 mounted to a chassis and with very little else involved. You had an interior only because they had to. That was kind of the situation. The car was wide, it was low, it looked exotic, and of course that big old 8-liter V10 up front helped drive home the point that it was seriously exotic. But it was also incredibly basic. There was no air conditioning, no windows, no roof, no power locks or power mirrors. The car was just really stripped down. V10 muscle and not much else. Now, for 1996, that's this car, the Viper had some pretty significant changes. And by far, the most important change that year was the addition of a new body style. Dodge was still offering the Viper as a roadster. That's this car, the open roof version. But they added in 96 a coupe, a full fixed roof coupe called the Viper GTS. I actually owned one of these cars in blue with the famous white stripes. It looked so cool. It was an iconic design, and it was a big deal that that was the new body style for 96. It also included some very impressive, far advanced creature comforts, such as air conditioning and power locks and power windows, all of which was still absent from the other body style, the RT10, which I'll get to more in a second. Now, the other big change for 96 was that the side exit exhausts were gone. When the Viper first came out in 92, it was famous for having side pipes, side exhausts that would burn your skin, your legs, as you were getting in and out of the car. In fact, they had to put very big warning labels in the door jamb reminding you not to touch the exhaust pipe because you were gonna get burned. The car was so raw that it would literally injure you as you were climbing inside. That was part of the charm. But for 96, that went away and they gave it regular exhaust pipes that went to the rear of the car. Instead, the side pipes were gone. There were a few other changes for 96, including a little more power. This car has about 415 horsepower and about 490 pound-feet of torque, which was a little boost compared to earlier Viper models. Besides that, a few tweaks here and there, but otherwise things stayed the same. And that meant that the new coupe model was luxurious and the convertible, the roadster, still wasn't. And by that, what I mean is this car still didn't have windows. There are not actually windows mounted in the door of this car. It doesn't have power windows. It doesn't have windows at all. Crank windows, you can't roll up windows. Instead, what it had was these things. You have this sort of canvas panel that you could fix fix in place into these little clips in the door, and that is what gave you windows. So if you absolutely had to drive your Viper in the rain, you had these canvas windows for the side, and there was a canvas top for the roof. Now, for '96, the Viper, the Roadster, also got an available hardtop that you could take off and put on if it was cold. But where's the fun in that? Too much comfort. Instead, you should suffer with your ridiculous side windows and this canvas panel that stuck on the car. When you didn't want your windows, you couldn't just roll them down. You had to stick them in the trunk or just leave them at home. They were too big to store in the interior. Now, you will notice that the little window inside this panel actually opens. It slides open. You stick your finger in this little hole and push it open. That was important because the Viper does not have any exterior door handles. That was another luxury reserved only for the coupe model. The convertible had only door handles inside the car. So if you wanted to open the door, you actually had to reach in and open the door using the interior door handle. And that meant that if you had the windows in place, you had to slide the window forward and reach in, because otherwise you couldn't reach into the car and actually open the door. Such was the level of basicness that we're talking about with the Viper. Now, this car has the ridiculous sliding windows, the soft top, the whole thing, and it also has this color scheme. A red Viper, pretty standard on those, with yellow wheels and a giant yellow Viper badge on the front fender area, the hood. Red and yellow, just like McDonald's. This is not a color scheme that the owner of this particular car painted it. Instead, Dodge actually offered the red and yellow ketchup and mustard Viper for the '96 model year, and it was so ridiculously McDonald's that nobody got it. Only about 160 Vipers were sold in this color combination before it was killed off entirely after just 1 year. I remember at the time the automotive press made fun of this color combination, called it the Ronald McDonald Edition Dodge Viper, and I'm sure some people who bought these then painted the wheels silver or black in order to get rid of the whole yellow and red thing. However, over time, this color combination has really grown on me. I think it adds a ton of character to this car that is so full of character, and it's sort of a ridiculous flair that Dodge ever offered red and yellow for this car. Plus, this McDonald's color combination gave birth to the greatest personalized license plate of all time, which is on this car right now, McFast. I absolutely love it and strongly suggest whoever buys this car gets the same license plate in whatever state you live in. It definitely fits this car absolutely beautifully. It is indeed McFast. Now, one interesting thing that a lot of people don't realize about this Viper was, in addition to some standard colors they offered, red and black, etc., there was also this special color scheme, and there was another one. A lot of people know about the ketchup and mustard Vipers, but a lot of people don't know that there was also a white Viper option that had white wheels and blue stripes. That was the other special edition color for '96, and it was also tremendously rare. You had these two kind of very special, very distinctive Viper colors. Neither was popular, and Dodge gave up on the whole thing beginning the following year. But anyway, since we're talking quirks, let's go back to some of the ridiculously basic, stripped down, raw features of this car. It's not just the driving experience, it's everything else too, including opening up the hood. Because this car doesn't have a hood release on the inside. You know, most cars, the driver's footwell, there's a little latch. Here, that latch is located in the grille. You want to open up the hood, you just walk up to the grille on the outside, you pull the latch, and then the hood pops open to this position. Anyone can do this at any time. There's no way to lock it, there's no way to stop it. If your Viper is parked somewhere, any member of the public can just walk up and open your hood. Now, once the hood is in this kind of up position, there's another little latch up front. You just unlatch that, it pops up even more, and then you go over to the side of the car and very delicately open up one of the largest panels in the entire history of the automobile. It is absolutely massive. The entire hood for this big engine, plus the front fenders, basically it all comes up in this kind of terrifying way, but if you're careful, everything works out just fine. And it reveals the powertrain. 8-liter V10, absolutely huge. It is a total treat to see it. You can see painted red Viper with the Viper logo. It is so cool and so special and so fitting in this car to have a big exotic engine given its rather exotic shape and other details. And between the hood opening procedure, the hood itself, and the powertrain, basically everything up here is cool and, well, raw. And next up in the world of crazy opening Viper things, we move on to the trunk, which shouldn't really be too crazy, but indeed it is. Now, the opening procedure is not that unusual. You stick the key in, you twist it, and then it opens up. The unusual part is there are no hydraulics for the trunk, and they're not just broken. You look at the hinges, there are no hydraulics mounted. This trunk was not meant to stay up with hydraulics. Instead, there is a prop, a trunk prop. Unlike every other car from this era, including ones that cost $7,000 new back in 1996, this car has a prop, like a hood, that you have to use to keep the trunk open. And once it's open, you can see there's no niceties back here. You don't have a trunk liner. They didn't even bother to put down the cheapest, crappiest felt like so many cars have. Instead, it's just completely exposed and the spare tire is there. So anything you put in the trunk, you have to do it with the prop holding the trunk up, and it's gonna be sharing space with the tire, so if it rubs on it, it might smell like rubber. You just have to deal with it. It's part of the ridiculousness of owning a Viper. And we're still not done with the crazy opening of things in this car. Now, for the doors, I already mentioned you have to reach inside to the door handle in order to open it up. Amazingly, there are door locks, but they're right next to the handle, and if you lock the door, anybody can just reach in and unlock it. Makes no sense why they even have them, but they do. Anyway, you can open up the door, and when you do, one of the things you discover is that the seat belt is mounted on the door itself, which makes absolutely no sense because the door weighs basically nothing, and in a side impact it would be deformed immediately, and then the seatbelt would be out of position and not providing any assistance to the driver or passenger. I don't know how they got that to pass regulations, but they do. This seatbelt is not mounted on a fixed, strong piece of the car, the chassis or the structure. Instead, it's on the movable door. Now, the other interesting things that go on here, for one, you still have the warning label in this car reminding you that there is a hot exhaust pipe below the door jamb where you could burn yourself. Now, like I said, the side exit exhausts were gone for this model. Instead, it went to the rear, but this area still does get pretty hot. Not as hot as in the earliest Vipers where you really would get burned, but still hot enough to cause a little bit of discomfort, so that warning label is there. By the way, speaking of that rear exit exhaust, in this car, it sounds absolutely glorious. Take a listen to a few revs of this fantastic V10. Now, the other thing worth noting when you get in the car is another example of how raw and basic it is. You have a different warning label here, and this one tells you that the top bar behind the seats above them is not actually a supportive roll bar. In other words, if the car rolls over, that piece will not actually support the weight of the car, and instead the weight will be entirely supported by your head. It's just warning you of that before you climb inside, in case you decide that maybe riding in this car isn't for you, given that before you even get in, you're warned that it could burn you, that it could kill you, and that the seat belts aren't really attached to anything. Anyway, let's explore the interior, shall we? Ah, yes. Next, we move inside the Viper and discover, well, quite a few interesting quirks, but let's start with the red accents. You can see a red shift lever, a red parking brake handle, and strangely enough, a red steering wheel rim. All of that stuff was unique to the ketchup and mustard Viper. It was part of the red-yellow situation. You got this red stuff inside. And honestly, I think that also contributed to this car being laughed at in its day for some of the ridiculous color decisions they made, but I think it makes it cooler now. You know, when you bought a Viper new in '96, you wanted to flex how rich you were. These days, you want character, you want flair, you want cool, and this crazy paint scheme brought into the interior certainly is that. I truly wish they had done some yellow in here too. I think it would have been kind of a cool and ridiculous compliment. Now, the other thing you definitely notice when you climb inside a Viper from this era is the interior is not very nice. It is all basic plastic in here. The entire dashboard, the center console, everywhere you look is just really cheap basic plastic pieces. Interestingly, that was not as true of the coupe model, the Viper GTS, which again had all the comfort features. It also got a nicer interior, but the convertible, the Roadster, this car kind of soldiered on with the original car's interior with only minor upgrades for the '96 facelift. And so you still had a lot of these cheap plastic pieces basically everywhere you looked. However, that was also kind of the point of the car. This was supposed to be an American, more affordable take on a European exotic. Those cars were expensive and complicated. This one, it was basic. There were exposed screws, cheap stuff, but it had a lot of power and it looked really cool. And the interior had some other rather questionable details. The turn signal stalk, for instance, is borrowed straight from basically every late 1980s Chrysler model, including all the cheap ones. You just got that in your Viper too. The parking brake lever, as you can see, just sort of sticks up unceremoniously. They didn't try to make it look cool. They didn't try to make it sort of hidden in a special spot. It just sort of sticks up randomly in the middle of the interior. The radio is a classic Chrysler situation from this era. Even though this is a Dodge, the radio is branded Chrysler because they just put the Chrysler branding on radios in all their models. Dodge, Chrysler, Plymouth, didn't matter. It all said Chrysler. They didn't try to make it a line. And it's just the same radio from all the other models. I do love the fact that there is one button that says clock loud. It's a toggle. You get to choose whether you want to see the clock displayed or whether you want the radio to be its loudest. You have to choose clock or loud. Chrysler brilliantly deduced that the kind of person who wanted the radio on its loudest setting didn't care what time it was. And the kind of person who wanted to know the time didn't need the radio as loud as possible. And so those two functions share a button in this ridiculous interior. And the ridiculousness goes further. You have only 3 climate vents. They're all in the middle. You don't have any on the sides. You didn't need them. You have 4 gauges right here in the middle, white-faced gauges to emphasize this car's performance level, and they're sort of tilted towards the driver, which is kind of cool. You have a glove box in this car, which is actually a surprise. Most exotics like this don't have one. You open it up and you can see there's a label at the back of the glove box that says that this car was proudly built by Team Viper, and actually that's a pretty cool label. Also in the glove box, of course, is the owner's manual. Unfortunately, very basic, boring, nothing interesting in there, but it is inside this special Viper embossed pouch, which is kind of cool. You also see the Viper logo in this interior on the center of the steering wheel. There it is, the Viper logo, not on an airbag. Even though airbags were mandatory for all cars sold in the US in '95, this is a '96, doesn't have an airbag. They got an exemption. The coupes did get an airbag, another luxury touch. They wanted those people to live. But the convertibles made it a couple more years without airbags before Dodge finally put them in. This car also, it's worth pointing out, has another interesting nod to practicality. In addition to the glove box, it also has storage at the front of the seats. You can see there's a little netting here where you could stick stuff if you wanted extra extra storage there, that's where you could put it. Aside from that though, the interior is really basic. The quirks and features of this car are mainly confined to some of the ridiculous design and engineering decisions around stuff that opens and how raw it is. There's not really that much to say about the interior because there's not that much going on in here. However, there is a lot going on in this car in general. Of course, I really want to get behind the wheel and drive it, so let's go take the Ronald McDonald Viper for a spin. All right, driving the ketchup and mustard Viper, the Ronald McDonald car, McFast. Now, you may recall that I owned a Viper. Early days of my YouTube channel, I did videos with my blue and white 97 Viper GTS, which was a Gen 2 car. This is technically a Gen 1.5. I don't get into all the Viper stuff. To me, they're all Gen 1s, but I had that car and I loved it. I absolutely thought it was the coolest thing in the world. You just really felt when you drove it like it was engine and chassis, and other stuff was ancillary, but only because they had to by law. Now, obviously, this car also feels that way. You can tell in just a second of driving, and I am taken back to what I remember loving so much about my blue-white GTS. God, this thing is just cool. The big ol' engine is just fun. Now let's start by talking sound. I am obsessed with how this car sounds. I don't know if this is an aftermarket exhaust or if this is OE and I just didn't hear this because I had a coupe when I had mine, but this car sounds, oh, it sounds so mean. I also just love how pure, exotic, ridiculous this car is. Yes, it shakes and it rumbles and it's loud, and normally when I'm filming, driving, I put the windows up so you can hear me better, but there are no windows and there's no real roof. And I've been a big advocate in the last few years for this concept of, you know, all cars are fast now, but EVs are so sanitized that, like, fast isn't what I'm trying to solve for anymore. It's enjoyment. And this car provides enjoyment. It's character in spades for this thing. Now, one thing that I always liked about this powertrain that I was always surprised by is that this car feels eager. You wouldn't think that because it's an American car from this era when they weren't making particularly eager, but also kind of poised and quick moving cars. It wasn't something the Americans were doing back then, but this car feels eager. It feels quick. And the powertrain especially feels eager. This is a big ol' American car engine, but it does not take a lot of effort to get it going. It is very quick to respond, even in the mid-range. I'm really surprised at how much the accelerator pedal just, like, you press it and you're like going. It's not an on-off switch like some people say, but it does, like, you push it and you're hearing stuff and you're feeling stuff quick. There's no annoying build-up or you know, oh, it's this big engine, but it's not as fast as you think. It is fast. It is rearing to go, and it sounds damn good doing it. Now, the other thing about these Vipers that I think they really don't get enough credit for is I consider them to be pretty good handling cars. I really think these cars actually rotate pretty well. They're relatively predictable and relatively easy to drive if you get experience and if you know what you're doing. These are wide cars with a really wide track and massively wide tires. And I've always kind of been skeptical of all these people who are like, oh, the Viper's gonna kill you. It's always trying to kill you. You have to be so careful. You do have to be careful, but as you pile on miles in this car, and I probably put 3,000 or 4,000, maybe 5,000 miles on my 97. As you pile on miles in this car, you do start to understand where it is forgiving and where it is not forgiving. And I think that generally, if you know what you're doing, it's not, you know, you don't floor it mid-corner in this car or in most cars. If you're willing to kind of get to understand its limits, it actually will reward you pretty well by being like a pretty enjoyable car and pretty quick to turn, quick to steer, quick to do what you want in a fun way. They're little cars that have very connected, quick steering, and they feel quick and sharp. They're obviously not, this isn't as sharp as a 993, which would have been a Porsche 911 equivalent at the time. But it's not as bad as I think people might think it is, considering that's never the story told about the Viper. To me, overall, this car has so much going for it. It just has so much character, so much exotic appeal. The sound is good. The drive is good. It just has so much feel. There is so much passion in this car, especially because this color combination just adds to the character. I get why people didn't want it at the time, but now it's like the Superbirds with the big wings. Now it only adds to like the ridiculousness and the absurdity of this car in a wonderful and fun way. I love this car. I think everybody should love this car. I still think they trade at bargain values considering how exotic of an experience they offer. And I especially love the ketchup and mustard Ronald McDonald cars, which I have always thought were cool my whole life. And so that's the 1996 Dodge Viper RT10 yellow and red, ketchup and mustard, the Ronald McDonald Viper, McFast. People may have laughed at this color combination back in the day, but I love it, and I love this car now, and you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give this Viper a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 52 out of 100, which puts the Viper here against similar cars. It's the exact same score I gave to the 1992 Viper I reviewed a while ago, but with some minor changes to account for some differences. This is a wonderful car, but obviously a compromised one. It's a lot of style and a lot of engine and not a lot of refinement or comfort. If that works for you, the Viper is a great choice, and I really think the yellow and red color scheme contributes perfectly to the Viper's ridiculousness.